Sorry, boy, but his captain's got to teach his men what happens to those what crossing.
Captain's got to teach stuff.
Good morning from the Bat Cave. It is actually afternoon, but it's Wednesday, February 14th, 2024, and I want to keep going through Exodus. So if you remember from the last time, we ended up in the Jews getting expelled from Egypt finally after the firstborn are dead. God is going to start bringing in elements of the law really at that time. So you kind of want to think about the believing in the death and resurrection of Christ and putting the Passover blood on your door as kind of a parallel, okay? And then from there, God is going to basically start teaching through types really what the new covenant is what the new covenant is ultimately going to be. So he's going to say, "Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Sanctify to me every firstborn and every offspring of the womb among the sons of Israel, both man and beast. It belongs to me." So notice how he's saying, remember, he killed all the firstborn of Egypt. He spared all the firstborn of Israel because they had the blood on their door, okay? But he's saying now all their firstborn belong to him. So he didn't just save them, he purchased them, okay, with his blood, okay, with the blood of the Lamb. And then he says, "Remember this day which you've gone forth out of Egypt from the house of slavery, for by a powerful hand the Lord brought you out of this place, and nothing leavened shall be eaten." So this is going to be the first day of the week of unleavened bread, which basically means you can't eat anything with leaven for a week. And what this really is meant to signify is your new life being unleavened, or in other words, being purged of sin through the blood of Christ. So this is why I do not subscribe to progressive sanctification. I subscribe to like a already not yet sanctification. We are sanctified spiritually in the inner man the moment we're born again. We're going to be sanctified bodily in the resurrection. I do not subscribe to a progressive sanctification. I don't have a problem with the idea of a progressive sanctification. I have a problem with the language, because sanctification is not used in that way in the scriptures. You're going to have Calvinist leaning translations that are going to put the word being sanctified in there, but you'll find that if you take that exact same phrase from King James and earlier translations, they're just going to say are sanctified. It's not going to say being sanctified. And I've looked into that with like ChatGPT, and again, it's a good language model. And they're basically saying it's a I forget what the tense is, but it's a tense that it's now and perpetual. So what they're saying is that you're once and for all sanctified, not you're in a process of being sanctified. So this idea of having a process of being sanctified or progressively regenerated like that is not biblical. You have a spiritual regeneration and then a bodily regeneration. You don't have a program of ongoing regeneration or sanctification. Now, the Bible does tell us to sanctify ourselves, which basically means apply what you have in terms of power in the inner man to your behavior in the outer man, and there are rewards for doing that, and you're going to be more useful to God, and you're going to I don't know exactly how this is going to work out, but I think there's going to be ranks in eternity, and our starting point when we get to eternity in terms of our affluence and our prominence is going to be based on how productive we were for the Lord here according to faith. So that is not about you making yourself a better person, but it is about you sanctifying your behavior so you act in a better way, so that you better reflect who Christ is, so that you're more useful to God in demonstrating Christ to other people. But it has nothing to do with, again, your bodily sanctification is going to come in the resurrection. Your spiritual sanctification has come in your accepting Christ and being regenerated. Okay, so there's nothing that you can do to make yourself better in between. There's only things that you can do to behave better. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Anyways, that's what being unleavened is all about. You are unleavened. You're a new lump. And Paul's going to get into this in 1 Corinthians. So you want to understand why he puts that right after being purchased by the blood of the Lamb, okay? Then he says, on the day in this month of Abib, this is what Nisan used to be called before, I guess, the Babylonian captivity. They changed the name of the month to Nisan. And I don't know if they were like aligning it with an Aramaic or Babylonian calendar. I don't know all the details on that, but it's the same month. Abib, the in the month of Abib, so this would have been Nisan, this would have been the 15th, they would go forth. And then it says, it shall be when the Lord brings you to the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Hivite, the Jebusite, which he swore to give to your fathers of the land flowing with milk and honey, that you should observe this rite this month. So in other words, the Passover and the unleavened, okay? For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the seventh day there shall be a feast unto the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten throughout the 7 days, and nothing leavened shall be seen among you, nor shall any leaven be seen among you in all your borders. Now when we get to Leviticus, it's going to be important because there are a couple of sacrifices that are particularly going to have leaven, and that is going to be things that are going to be deeply symbolic about Christ putting on our sinful flesh, and also about our we recognizing that we still have a sinful flesh, and yet we're sanctified unto the Lord. Okay, so being a living sacrifice. Okay. But he says, you shall tell your son on that day, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. And it shall serve as a sign on your hand and a reminder on your forehead. So you're going to see this hand and forehead. Okay, that's going to come up in the mark of the beast later. This is why. It's a sign in your hand and your forehead that the law of the Lord may be in your mouth, for with a powerful hand the Lord brought you out of Egypt. Now, I don't know why he calls it a sign in your hand and forehead here. If somebody's got a little bit more insight into that idiomatic usage, I'd like to hear that. I know it doesn't mean wrap a thing around your arm and a box on your forehead like the Jews do. But he's basically saying that the memorial is going to be something that's signified in the hand and the forehead. And it sounds like it's the Lord's version of basically being sealed with the Holy Spirit, or the Old Testament version, which the Antichrist is going to mimic with the mark of the beast. Okay, so notice how he has this right after the Passover, when the Antichrist dies and has a false resurrection. That's when he is going to apply his mark on the hand and the forehead. Okay. Therefore you shall keep this ordinance as a appointed time from year to year. Now when the Lord brings you to the land of the Canaanite, as he swore to you and your fathers, and gives it to you, you shall devote to the Lord the first offspring of every womb, the first offspring of every beast that you own. The males belong to the Lord. But the first offspring of the donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. But if you do not redeem it, you shall break its neck. And every firstborn among you, every firstborn of man among your sons, you shall redeem. Okay. So notice he says of a donkey. Why a donkey? Maybe because donkeys are known for being stubborn. But essentially, you either get redeemed, or you get purchased by God, or you die. Okay. That's what's going to happen with the firstborn. Okay. Now, this is going to signify what's ultimately going to happen to all of us. We're going to be redeemed, or we're going to die the second death, which is hell. Okay? And then it shall be when your son asks you in a time to come, saying, what is this? Then you shall say to him with a powerful hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt and from the house of slavery. It came about when Pharaoh was stubborn about letting us go. So there's the donkey. Okay? That the Lord killed the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beasts. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord the males, the first offspring of every womb, but the first offspring of my sons I redeem. See that? So he says, I sacrifice to the Lord the males. Okay, so breaking the neck of this donkey is like breaking the neck of Pharaoh. Okay, the donkey is known for being a stubborn animal. And he's basically saying you can redeem it. Now it says the first offspring of a donkey, you shall redeem it with a lamb. So you can choose to either redeem it or break its neck. So this is kind of a signal that Pharaoh had a choice. He had a free choice to humble himself or die. Okay. Then he says, and it shall come about when your son asks you. Okay, then he says, let's see. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord the males, but the firstborn of my sons I redeem. So the beasts he sacrifices, but the sons he redeems. Okay? And it shall serve as a sign on your hand and as phylacteries on your forehead. So let's look at this phylacteries. Maybe he does ordain a silly little box. Let's see. A fillet for the forehead. I'm not sure what that is. So I don't know. Maybe there was a physical thing that they were supposed to have there, and there's some rationale to the thing that the Jews do. I have a feeling that it's more symbolic, but I could be mistaken. Let's see here. So she'll serve as a sign in the phylacteries on your foreheads, and with a powerful hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt. For with a powerful hand. So it's a sign in your hand, because with a powerful hand he brought us out of Egypt. Okay? And it says, now when Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them by the way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near. For God said the people might change their minds when they see war and return to Egypt. So God is deliberately leading them away from the Philistines. Again, he's constantly testifying to free will in the people, right? It's like, yeah, could God just fill them with the Holy Spirit to not be afraid of them and be, full of boldness? Sure, he could, okay? But God is not about brainwashing people. He's not about just taking over control of people's minds. There are times that he's going to do that to make an example, but he doesn't want to do that ultimately. He wants us to walk in freedom with him, okay? So what God is going to do is he's going to lead them down through the Red Sea coast to the Gulf of Aqaba, okay? And this is where you're going to notice this with a lot of your Bible maps that you find. They delete the crossing of the Red Sea, okay? Now, this is not the Mount Sinai. Mount Sinai is over here, but you're going to see this in maps pop up all over the Bible. You see there's no crossing of the Red Sea going on when it shows there. They would say they crossed this sea of reeds, which is like, no, they crossed the Red Sea right here into the area of the Sinai right here. And most of the 20th century, look at all these maps. They all do it, see? They say that Mount Sinai is here. This Mount Sinai was named so by Catherine, the mother of Constantine. But she was also known to do stupid things like claiming that she found the true cross that Jesus Christ was crucified on 300 years later. And she was superstitious, and she, was really high on herself. I don't know where she gets her advice from. I don't know if she thinks she's divinely inspired or whatever, but she's got some weird ideas, and she's going to name this the Sinai Peninsula and say that Mount Sinai is here, and that's why you have St. Catherine's Monastery. Catherine is the mother of Constantine, okay? Nothing that Catherine, Constantine's mother, says is valid, so you want to look. She's responsible for all these bad maps we have. But if she would have just listened to Paul said that Mount Sinai was in Arabia. Okay? And let's see here. We got to pick. I think it was Ron Wyatt who did this first. He does have some hokey ideas, but I think he was right on this. He finds the place. This would have been the beachhead where the Jews would have come through these trails and then all gathered and encamped here and then crossed the Red Sea here. And then they would have come down here to Elim and ultimately over here to Mount Sinai. The wilderness of sin and then Mount Sinai, or it's called Jabir el-Laws, okay? So we're gonna kind of walk you through this journey. It says, hence God led the people out of the way of the wilderness to the Red Sea, and the sons of Israel went up in a martial array to the land of Egypt. Now let's go back to King James. We'll go old school. They went up harnessed, so a martial array, like a military, basically, in a formation. And Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had straitly sworn to the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones hence with you. And they took their journey from Succoth and encamped in Etham in the edge by the wilderness. So let's see if we got Succoth here. So apparently there's more than one place called Succoth, and Succoth it's the same Sukkot for booths or tabernacles. So my guess is they set out from Succoth and encamped in Etham on the edge of the wilderness. I don't know. It makes me wonder if it's saying they set off by camps or by tents or whatever, or if that's another place, because there's a Succoth in Palestine and there's a Succoth in Egypt. So it says, the Lord was going before them in a pillar of cloud to lead them by the way, and a pillar of fire by night to give them light, that they might travel by day and by night. And he did not take the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire by night from the people. So they always had this supernatural pillar leading them along the way. Now the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, tell the sons of Israel to turn back to the sea before Pi-hahiroth. Between Migdol and the sea you shall camp in front of Baal-zephon, opposite it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say to the sons of Israel, they are wandering aimlessly in the land, and the wilderness has shut them in. Thus I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will chase after them, and I will be honored through Pharaoh and all his army. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, and they did so. So God is deliberately setting Pharaoh up to chase after them so that he can destroy them in the Red Sea, okay? Then the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled. Pharaoh and his servant had a change of heart towards the people, and they said, what is this we have done, that we have let Israel go from serving us? So he made his chariot ready and took his people with him, and he took 600 select chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh of Egypt, and he chased after the sons of Israel as the sons of Israel were going out boldly. Then the Egyptians chased after them with all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, his horsemen and his army, and they overtook them camping by the sea beside Pi-hahiroth in front of Baal-zephon. Okay, now, that's just a thought I had now. One of the ways that God's going to harden a person's heart, you're going to find this in 2 Kings, where he's going to have a lying spirit come to Pharaoh and have false prophets tell him that he's going to win a war when he's really going to lose, okay? That's one of the means that God is going to harden a person's heart, okay? He doesn't just reach in and control them. He basically lets demons counsel them through false advisors and stuff, because God wants to destroy them. He wants them to walk into something that's going to get themselves killed or get themselves humbled or whatever it is, okay? And then he says, as Pharaoh drew near, the sons of Israel looked, and behold, the Egyptians were marching after them. They became very frightened, and so the sons of Israel cried out to the Lord. And they said to Moses, is it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? Why have you dealt with us this way, bringing us out of Egypt? Is this not the word that we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, leave us alone that we may serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. But Moses said to the people, do not fear, stand by and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you've seen today, you will never see again forever. The Lord will fight for you while you keep silent. So this is where I probably like, the Lord shall fight for you and you shall hold your peace. I like that. That's the King James. And the Lord said unto Moses, wherefore, why do you cry unto me? Speak to the children of Israel that they go forward. But lift up thy rod and stretch up thy hand over the sea and divide it, and the children of Israel will go on dry ground through the midst of the sea. And I, behold, I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will follow them, and I will get me honor upon Pharaoh and upon his hosts and upon his chariots and upon all his horsemen. Okay, so Pharaoh's armies are collateral damage. He has hardened their heart to such a degree they've seen all these miracles. Now they're going to see him part the Red Sea, and they're literally going to be so blinded by deception that they're going to think, oh yeah, we're just going to go into the Red Sea too with these walls of water here, and we're going to make it. Okay, we're going to get revenge on them, not realize that God is leading them into their doom. Okay, so he says, and the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord when I have gotten honor upon Pharaoh and upon his chariots and upon his horsemen. So notice his goal here is to see that the Egyptians know that Yahovah is the one true God. Okay. Now, it just so happens, if you get your Egyptian timelines right, that you're going to have a monotheistic religion pop up in Israel after that. And they're going to worship just supposedly the God of the sun. But remember, Jesus is called the Son of Righteousness, S-U-N, okay? And it says, the angel of God, which went before them in the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud went before their face and stood between them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel, and it was a cloud and darkness to them, okay? So remember, the Lord is a consuming fire clothed in thick darkness, okay? And he says, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong wind all that night, and made the sea a dry land, and the waters were divided. So the Lord sent a wind to actually drive the Red Sea back. See, there's no way you can get a sea of reeds or some other thing but walls of water being pushed back by the flood. Remember, this is the same way that God is going to basically remove the waters from Noah's flood from the earth. He's going to send a wind, and he's going to blow them north and south, okay? And the children of Israel went to the midst of the sea on dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on the right hand and on their left, okay? You don't get to see reads out of this, okay? You got to remember, in the mid-18th to around the mid-19th century, or I'm sorry, mid-19th to the mid-20th century, you have this phenomena going on where you have these skeptics and enlightenment thinkers and rationalists who are trying to debunk all the miracles of the Bible. And the church largely buys into it. Mostly your Reformed, your Protestant denominations are going to buy into it, because they're just literally just getting sucked into this delusion of rationalism, because it was that thinking systematically that also justified them overthrowing their governments and basically becoming republics and democracies instead of kingdoms. So the same mentality that justified their overthrowing their governments is the same mentality that's going to draw them towards rejecting the Bible, because the Bible tells you not to rebel against your king. They were already rejecting the Bible, okay? This is why we need to walk back from before these revolutions and say, hey, we never had a right. We never had a right to overthrow a government. We never had a right to be part of a rebellion. What we had a right to do is die for the truth. That's the only right Christians have, okay? I'm going to harp on that a lot, because it's going to lead to our doom in this country if people don't get that straight, okay? And the Egyptians pursued and went in after them in the midst of the sea, even all of Pharaoh's horses and chariots and his horsemen. See how God can deliver you from an unjust government? And it came to pass in the morning watch, the Lord looked upon the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, and they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fights for them and the Egyptians. So you're halfway into the Red Sea, and you figure out that the Lord is now fighting for the Egyptians, or fighting for Israel against the Egyptians. Like this just now clicked with you, apparently. Spiritual blindness. And the Lord said unto Moses, but the spiritual blindness thing, you got to realize this. I mean, look how many American Christians are like shouting America's glory as this country is falling apart morally, economically, and most people don't realize, but militarily. We are not the country that we were 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, okay, compared to the rest of the world. And we think we're just literally unstoppable. We're not, okay? This is a blindness that is coming on America. We're more like Egypt than like Israel, but we think we're more like Israel. Okay? Stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come up upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it, and the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. So the sea returned to its strength, he says. American Standard says, returned to its strength. Return to its normal depth. So basically he pushed the sea back, and now it just pushed back on them, okay? So then he says, and the waters returned and covered the chariots, and the horsemen and all the Pharaoh came into the sea after them, and there remained not so much as one of them. Okay, so it says the waters returned and covered the chariots, and all the host of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them, there remained not one of them. So again, we don't really have a clear record that Pharaoh died, okay? We don't see that he went in there. He could have. Maybe he did. But it says, but the children of Israel walked upon dry land in the midst of the sea, and the waters were a wall to them unto their left and unto their right. Thus the Lord saved Israel out of the hands of the Egyptians. And Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. And Israel saw that the great work that the Lord had did upon the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord and believed the Lord and his servant Moses. So this is how God ultimately establishes Moses as really the king of Israel. Okay, you're going to find in Deuteronomy there's going to be a song about Moses, and they're going to say that he was king in the wilderness. Okay, so as long as they're in the wilderness, he is their king. Once they go into the promised land under the headship of Joshua, they're under judges. They're really a confederacy where God is raising up judges for them. He does prophecy that they're eventually going to have another king, and that's obviously going to be first Saul and then David. And they're a foretype of Antichrist coming before Christ. Okay, but Moses was actually their king in the wilderness, and this is how God establishes that Moses as his representative. So he is a prophet king. He is not a priest king, but he is a prophet king. Okay. Then sang Moses and the children of Israel this song to the Lord, and spake, saying, I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and the rider are thrown into the sea. I was raised in charismatic churches. We used to sing this song. The Lord is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. He is my God, and I will prepare my habitation, my father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a man of war. The Lord is his name. The depths have covered them. They sank to the bottom of the stone. Thy right hand, O Lord, is become glorious in power. Thy right hand, O Lord, has dashed in pieces the enemy. And the greatness of thine excellency has overthrown them that stood up against thee. Thou sent forth thy wrath, which consumed them of thy stubble. And with the blast of thy nostrils, the waters were gathered together, the flood stood upright as a heap, and the depths were congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, and I will overtake, I will divide the spoil, my lust shall be satisfied upon them. I will draw my sword, my hand shall destroy them. But thou didst blow with the wind, and the sea covered them, and they sank in the mighty waters. Who is like unto thee, O Lord, among the gods? Who is like unto thee, glorious in holiness, fearful in praises, doing wonders? Thou stretchest thy hand, and the earth swallowed them. Thou in thy mercy hast led forth thy people, which thou hast redeemed. Thou hast guided them in thy strength, in thy holy habitation. The people shall hear and be afraid. Sorrow shall take hold of the inhabitants of Palestina. Notice this. Palestina. This is in the King James, okay? So people have a big issue with you calling that area Palestine, okay? But it's the Philistines were there. Remember, the Philistines were there before Abraham got there. Okay, so don't take issue with people calling the land of Israel Palestine. Okay, the Philistines were always there, and Abraham had made deals with them that they were going to live side by side in peace. Okay, so they have a right to the land too. Now they're ultimately going to be deported for things that they do, and that's in Joel 3. But the original covenant between Abraham and the Philistines, and then also Isaac and the Philistines, was that they treat each other well, okay? And they have not lived up to that, either side, okay? So then the dukes of Edom shall be amazed, the mighty men of Moab trembling shall take hold of them, the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away. So notice you have Palestina, that's going to be your Gaza Strip area. Moab and Edom are going to be middle and southern Jordan, and then Canaan is obviously what's Israel right now. Israel was never given the land of the Philistines, it was given the land of the Canaanites. Okay, it's really important when you get into what's going on right now with the Gaza Strip. Okay, when we're talking about God's ultimate determination, not who we think is right and wrong, or who started it, or what's just and what's unjust in worldly standards, but what was God's program. And if you go all the way back to the Bible, Israel and the people of Gaza should be living side by side in peace. That should be the deal. But they're not. They're all in sin, okay? So we don't really take sides in this. We don't say good guys Israel, bad guys Gaza, or vice versa, okay? There's two people who are not living up to their covenant agreements as people that their forefathers made, and they're not honoring God with their behavior. And they're reaping what they're sowing, okay? Fear and dread shall be upon them, and the greatness of thine arm shall be as still as a stone, till thy people pass over, O Lord, till the people pass over, which thou hast purchased. Thou shalt bring them in and plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance, in a place, O Lord, which thou hast made for thee to dwell, in the sanctuary, O Lord, which thy hands have established, and the Lord shall reign forever and forever. So notice how he's saying that the people surrounding the territory promised to Israel shall fear, and the people of Canaan, whose territory is promised to Israel, shall melt away. Okay, it's different, right? But you're going to find that the Israelites are not told to attack these people. Okay, they'll defend themselves against them, but they're not told to attack them and conquer their lands. So then he says, thou shalt bring them in and plant them in the mountain of thine inheritance, in the place, O Lord, which thou have made to thee to dwell. So they're already prophesying Jerusalem, okay? The Lord shall reign forever and ever. They're also prophesying the Lord reigning from that place. For the horse of Pharaoh went in with his chariots and with his horsemen into the sea, and the Lord brought again the waters of the sea upon them. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea. And Miriam the prophetess, the sister of Aaron, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women went out after them with timbrels in their hands. And Miriam answered they, saying, Sing ye to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and the rider have thrown into the sea. So God has not just established Moses. He's established Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. So I want you to pay attention to this. He has established three persons to represent him. 2 men and a woman. Okay? 2 men and a woman to represent his headship over Israel. So think about that. Now, Moses is obviously going to be over Aaron and Miriam, even though Aaron and Miriam came before him. And there's a typology there. The Father and the Spirit are, in terms of authority, come before the Son, but the Son is the one who ultimately gets the glory. And Aaron, Miriam, and Moses are a type of the Father, Spirit, and Son. Okay, your theologians are going to give you that because that would put a feminine in the triune Godhead, and we can't have that because they have to all be boys, right? No, sorry. You have a very this typology is going to keep coming back if you understand the types that God is putting forward. So you have Moses, Aaron, and Miriam. Okay, and Moses is the youngest of the 3. So it says, when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah because they were bitter, for the name was called Marah. So apparently Marah means bitter. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, oh, I'm sorry. Pause. It said, so Moses brought Israel from the wet Red Sea, and they went to the wilderness of Shur, and they dwelt there 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. And they came to Marah, and when they came to Marah, they could not drink the waters of Marah, for they were bitter. Therefore the name was called Marah. And the people murmured against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? Okay? Now here's the thing. I want you to pay attention to how these people are and how quickly they turn on Moses. Okay? They're constantly doing it. They're doing it when God's doing his 10 plagues. They're doing when God leads them up to the Red Sea. He just drowned all the Egyptians in the Red Sea 3 days ago. Okay? And they murmur against Moses, saying, what shall we drink? And he cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a tree, which when he had cast it into the waters were made sweet. There he made them for a statute and an ordinance, and there he proved them. If thou wilt diligently hearken to the voice of the Lord thy God, and will do that which is right in his sight, and will give ear to his commandments, and keep all his statutes, I will put none of these diseases upon you, which I have brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord that healeth thee. Okay? So, apparently, the Lord gave this sign of a tree going into the water, and the tree basically prevents them from, or causes their healing. So he's foretyping the cross here, okay? Jesus is going to get put on a tree, and that's going to be their healing, okay? So he says, I am the Lord that heals thee. And he's promising that if they obey him, that he won't put the plagues on them that he put on the Egyptians. So then they came to Elim, where there were 12 wells of water and 10 palm trees. Okay, so you have 12 wells of water and 70 palm trees. So you have 12 and 70, and they encamp there by the waters. Okay, so right after having a foretype of the cross, he has a 12 and 70 sign. Okay, that's the Jews and the Gentiles. It says 12 springs of water and 70 date palm trees. So apparently these are palm trees that they could get dates from. Okay. So then they took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came into the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departing out of the land of Egypt. Okay. So they were brought somewhere where they have date trees and they have water. And then they probably have some food. They haven't had manna yet, but they probably have food that they have packed with them. But it's now 2 weeks later. And so they're running out of the food that they would have grabbed from the house on the way out, okay? So it says, the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness, and the children of Israel said unto them, would to God that we have died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the flesh pots, and when we did eat bread to the full. For you have brought us forth into this wilderness to kill the whole assembly with hunger. God just did a miracle for them about 10 days earlier. Okay? It's 15 days. This is 2 weeks is all they've had. And God's done miracle after miracle after miracle, and they're like, you're trying to get us killed. Still going to keep saying it. And then the Lord said to Moses, behold, I will rain bread from heaven for you, and the people will go out and gather a certain rate every day, that I may prove them. In other words, I may test them whether they will walk in my law or no. So I want you to pay attention to this. God is saying, I am going to see whether or not they will walk in my law before he gives them the law. Okay? This is a pre-law. This is a warm-up to law. So when God gives them the law and says, I know you guys aren't going to keep this, he is saying, I showed you in real time, I can't give you a single commandment that you keep. Okay? And this is where he first gives them the Sabbath. The Sabbath law is the first law, and they prove unwilling or unable to keep it. Okay? So those of you who are Sabbath people, remember, they were always going to fail the Sabbath. Okay? And it shall come to pass on the 6th day that they shall prepare that which would they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily. In other words, that's the day that they're going to gather twice as much on Friday, and they're going to rest on Saturday. And Moses and Aaron said to the children of Israel, at even, then you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt. So notice he's saying, then you shall know. Like, they should know already that God brought them out of Egypt, but he's going to say, here, I'm going to give you this sign. And if they don't obey this sign, God is going to declare, I know they won't keep the law. Okay? This is the generation that's going to die in the wilderness. He already knows they are not good. They don't believe anything he says. They're constantly accusing Moses of trying to get them killed, even though God's constantly doing miracles for them. And it's only been 2 weeks. I mean, wrap your mind around that. They probably went through months of these plagues in Egypt, and then they get let go, and then they get the Red Sea parted, and the waters miraculously purified, and it's been 2 weeks, and they're ready to stone Moses because God's just trying to get him killed. Moses said, thus shall it be when the Lord shall give you in the evening flesh to eat, and in the morning bread to the full. For that the Lord hears your murmurings, that you murmur against him. And what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord. In other words, you bitch at us, you're bitching at God. Okay? And this is something that we need to take forward in terms of how we think about authority, how we think about the circumstances of our life, how we think about our parents, all this stuff. There's such a propensity in our culture to blame the people that came before us or the people who are in authority over us as if they're the problem. And we never stop to consider maybe we're the problem, and that's why we have them in authority over us. Maybe the point is our humiliation. Okay? And God makes that point throughout the scriptures, is that you're all sinful and you need somebody who's going to make it tough for you, so you humble yourself. And as you humble yourself, you find despite this wicked king or these messed up parents or whatever your circumstances are, that God still blesses you in the midst of that. Okay? And your focus is not supposed to be on your parents or on your government. It's supposed to be on God. Okay? God establishes authority, and he establishes the authority you need. And that's hard to believe when you have your King Kim Jong-uns in the world, okay? But you need to recognize that God is not, he didn't accidentally put King Kim Jong-un in power, okay? Nothing's happening by accident. So Moses spake against Aaron, say to the congregation of the children of Israel, come near before the Lord, for he has heard your murmurings. And it came to pass, as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of Israel, that they looked towards the wilderness, and behold, the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. So they're not just seeing the cloud, they're seeing light, maybe? Like the glory of the Lord, okay? And the Lord spake to Moses, saying, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. So they see this, and the Lord is speaking to them. Okay, so don't just think like Moses is secretly hearing from God in his ear. The Lord's in this cloud. The Lord is right there with them, visibly present among them. Okay, I've heard them. Remember, this cloud and this fire has never departed from them. This is how wicked these people are. So I want you to understand this. Job, Satan said, he'll curse you to your face. And when God actually shows up, Job shuts his mouth. Okay. They have this cloud in this fire, this pillar of fire that is constantly in their presence, and they're still bitching. Okay? With the miracles. So I want you to understand these Jews, okay? Especially when we get into the last days, when these Jews are going to lead people into apostasy. Okay? They have the Lord right in their presence doing miracles, and they still complain. Just like they did when Jesus was physically among them. So don't you think for a second that it's lack of evidence that's their problem, okay? So he says, I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at even you shall eat flesh, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread, and you shall know that I am the Lord your God. And it came to pass that at even the quails came up and covered the camp in the morning, and then dew lay all around the host. So he makes a flock of quails land among them. And when the dew that lay was gone up, Behold, up upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as hoarfrost on the ground. So it's like frost. What is this? And he says, and the children of Israel saw it, and they said, it is manna. What is it? Okay? For they wist not what it was. They didn't know what this stuff was, so they said, it's called, what is this stuff? And Moses said unto them, this is the bread which the Lord has given to eat. So I just made quail rain on you guys. You got meat. Now you got bread. This is the thing that the Lord has commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man. So let's say this is like a pound. Okay, grab a pound of this bread for every man. And according to the number of the persons, take ye every man for them which are in his tents. And the children of Israel did so, gathering some more, some less. And when they did meet it with an omer, he that gathered much had nothing over, he that gathered little had no lack. They gathered every man according to his eating. In other words, everyone had as much to keep them full. Okay? This was freaking lembas bread. God rained lembas bread on them, and they had as much as they needed, and they were full. Okay? You might have got sick of eating lembas bread, but it was amazing. Okay? And Moses said, let no man leave it until the morning. Notwithstanding, they hearkened not unto Moses. Never mind, we see the Lord in the cloud, and he's doing miracles right in front of our face, and we're hearing him talk to Moses. We're still going to test him. And so we're going to save some of it for later, because we don't know if he's going to give us some more tomorrow. Do you see how they're constantly betting against the character of God? He's telling him to give you this stuff every day. But we're going to try to keep some over for tomorrow anyways. We're going to test every single thing the Lord says. We're going to treat the Lord like he is not trustworthy, no matter how much he does, okay? This is all before they get to Mount Sinai. We're on week 2, okay? Mount Sinai is going to be like week 6, okay? And we're like on week 3 maybe, okay? And he says, but some of them left it until the morning, and it bred worms and stank, and Moses was wroth with them. And like I told you not to do that. Now you got stinky worm bread all over. And they gathered it every morning, every man according to his eating, and when the sun waxed hot, it melted. So whatever this stuff was, it's kind of like a sugary, grainy, wafery, whatever it is. It's very light, okay? And it melts in the sun, okay? And then it came to pass on the 6th day they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for one man, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses, and he said to them, this is that which the Lord has said. Tomorrow is the rest for the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. So this is where he establishes the Sabbath, before Mount Sinai. Now I want you to make sure you understand this. They never knew about a Sabbath before this. There is no evidence of anywhere in the Bible of a Sabbath before this. Okay? Remember, the stuff that he's going to tell Moses, and I want you guys to understand this when you read Genesis. You read Genesis 1, and he says, here's what the Lord Jehovah did on this day, okay? But he's already said to Moses in Exodus that he never gave his name, Jehovah, to Abraham and Isaac. He never gave his name to them, which means what Moses is writing down in Genesis, they didn't know. I want you guys to wrap your mind around that, okay? Yes, they had probably the history of Adam on down, but in terms of the whole creation account, we don't have a record that they know this. They didn't even know God's name, okay? Abraham and Isaac and Jacob didn't. Moses gets his name for the first time, okay? Now Moses is getting the Sabbath for the first time, and Moses is going to be given Genesis that is going to establish why the Sabbath is there. But this is all new revelation to the people of God, okay? You have no record of a Sabbath before this. So your Book of Jubilees people and your Hebrew roots people who are all telling you the Sabbath is eternal, or your covenant theologians that come out of Calvinism who are telling you that the old covenant and the Sabbath law is eternal and it just switched to Sunday, they're all lying. There is no record of the Sabbath before this happened, and this is about 1200 BC. So the world has been around for about half of its entire history without a Sabbath. Without a Sabbath ordinance, without anyone keeping the Sabbath. No mention of it whatsoever. Okay? Now, he's teaching them what the Sabbath is. He said, tomorrow is the rest of the holy Sabbath unto the Lord. Bake that which you bake today, and seethe that which you seethe, and that which remaineth over, lay over for you to be kept until morning. Okay? He is establishing what the Sabbath is for them for the first time. Then he's going to put it in the law and explain that God created the earth in 7 days. It's within this context that Moses is going to write the first 5 books while they're in the wilderness, and he's going to get from the Lord Genesis through Joseph. And some of that is going to be their history, and they know it. But he's going to get divine revelation. He's going to get the divine commentary on this stuff. They don't just have that because God hasn't given it to anyone yet, okay? God's just done what he's done. You don't really have real interaction between God and many people prior to Moses, okay? So then it says, and they laid it up till morning, and Moses bathed, and it did not stink, neither was there any worm therein, okay? Now think about this. Job is saying when God shows up in Job, and this is before they go in the wilderness, I have heard about you, but I've never seen you, okay? There are very few people who've had direct interaction with God. You're going to have Noah. You're going to have Cain. You're going to have Adam. You're going to have Enoch, okay? You're going to have a certain amount of prophesying, and you're going to have the Holy Spirit interacting with people, but you don't have direct revelation from God much until Moses. You're going to have Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob have their visions, and the word of the Lord came to me and said this and this and this, which Moses is going to account that. But God's not just speaking to them all the time like he's speaking to Moses. And God is going to say that other people he's going to speak in a dream or a vision or something like that. That's how God communicates with people, and Job is going to account that. But when he gets to Moses, he's speaking to him face to face, and he's giving him script. He's telling him, he's giving him commentary on their history. He's telling him about the creation of the world. He's telling him what's going on, okay? And so then he says, Moses said, eat today, for today is a Sabbath unto the Lord. Today you shall not find it in the field. So now he's declaring to them what the Sabbath is, okay? Now he says, 6 days shall you gather, but on the seventh day, which is the Sabbath, in it there shall be none. So he is teaching them the Sabbath for the first time. And it came to pass that there went out some of the people on the seventh day to go gather, and they found none. I told you, why do you test everything the Lord says? And the Lord said unto Moses, how long refuse you to keep my commandments and thy laws? So notice he's giving them manna and the Sabbath, one law to see if they'll keep it. And they got people testing it. See for that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Listen to this. Remember, God did not create man for the Sabbath, but the Sabbath for man. Now listen to this. See for that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Given you the Sabbath, okay? He's given you a day off. And he's promised you that he's provided you enough on Friday so that you can eat on Saturday. He's given you a day off in your week, okay? Therefore he giveth on you the sixth day the bread of 2 days. Abide ye every man in his place. Let no one go out of his place on the seventh day, okay? So this is what the Lord is telling Moses to say to them. And the Lord said to Moses, right? And so this is what Moses is telling the people that the Lord said verbatim. The Lord is giving them the Sabbath for the first time between the Red Sea and Mount Sinai. And it's a test, and they failed the test. So the people rested on the seventh day, okay? So the people rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the people rested on the seventh day. They just started resting on the seventh day right here. Any Hebrew Israelite or Hebrew roots or Messianic Jew or this Sean guy who's always on Standing for Truth wants to debate this, it's right here. That's when they get the Sabbath, okay? Anybody who's telling you the book of Jubilees is that this Sean guy who's always on Standing for Truth, he counts the book of Jubilees as scripture, he's an idiot. There's stuff in the book of Jubilees that disagrees with the Bible. It's that simple, okay? It's not scripture. So the house of Israel called the name thereof manna, and it was like coriander seed and white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. And it's like, it's just this really light bread stuff, okay? Think kind of like the stuff that you would get for your communion wafers, but it's sweet. It tastes better. It's literally like that, okay? And Moses said, this is the thing that the Lord commands, fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I fed you in the wilderness when I brought you up forth from the land of Egypt. So apparently this bread doesn't spoil naturally. Like it doesn't just decompose like other stuff. It melts in the heat. But he's saying, go get a jar of this stuff and save some of it for future generations to keep to know this is what he fed us with in the wilderness. Okay? And Moses said, take a pot and put an omer full of manna therein and lay it up before the Lord to be kept all your generations. So they're going to keep this. They don't have a tabernacle yet. They don't have an ark of the covenant yet, but it's going to go in there. Okay? Because Jesus is the bread from heaven. You're also going to have in that ark of the covenant, you're going to have a triune witness of what God did for them. Okay? As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years, and they came to a land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came until the borders of the land of Canaan. Now, an omer is a 10th part of an ephah. So that simplifies it, right? Because we know everyone knows what an ephah is, okay? It's 1/10 of that, okay? Apparently they were on the metric system, and an ephah is the big amount, a jug, and an omer is like, a cup. So a cup of this and a jug of that, okay? It's a 10th. There's 10 cups in a jug. Everyone knows we're on the metric system, okay? And all the congregation of the children of Israel journeyed from the wilderness of Sin after their journeys, according to the command of the Lord, and they pitched at Rephidim, and there was no water for the people to drink. You think they're going to be like, don't worry, the Lord will provide us with water, because he's done this several times. Nope. Wherefore did the people chide with Moses, saying, give us water that we may drink. And Moses said to them, why chide ye with me? Wherefore do you tempt the Lord? Well, you don't demand stuff, okay? And the people thirsted there for water, and the people murmured against Moses, and he said, wherefore is this that thou hast brought us up out of Egypt to kill us and our children in water with thirst? Every other day you guys are talking crap about something. We just had a week so that they could get the manna for a week and then the Sabbath, okay? So we're on week 4 coming out of Egypt, and here we are, okay? Remember, it's 50 days, and they're on like week 25 days, okay? It's like 50 days between Passover, and they spent that time walking, and then it's 2 weeks later, and then they're going to get to Sinai here in about 2 or 3 weeks, okay? Why are you doing this? And the people there thirsted for water and commanded, and so then Moses said, go on before the people and take with thee the elders of Israel and thy rod, wherewith thou smotest the river, and take the hand and go. Now, Paul's going to teach us that the rock is Christ. Remember, these are the ancestors of the Jews who smote Christ, and yet it was healing for all of us, okay? And he says, behold, I will stand before thee on the rock in Horeb, and you shall smite the rock, and there you shall come water out of it, that the people may drink, okay? So Christ is going to be smitten by the priests, and water is going to come from his side, and we're going to be born of his side, like Eve came out of Adam's side, okay? And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. And he came, and he called the name of the place Massah and Meribah because of the chiding of the children of Israel, because they tempted the Lord, saying, is the Lord among us or not? Look at the cloud, look at the fire. Yes, he's among us. Why are you always talking crap? He said Makkah or Massah, the place in the desert, and Meribah. Let's see, the face used in a variety of applications, prepositions, against, in your face, kind of. That's what Meribah means. It means in your face, get in your face, okay? Which is where did they smote Christ? They smote him on the cheek, okay? So that's what this all represents, is them smiting Christ on the cheek. And then it says, let's see. Then came Amalek and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So now that they've got this water, the Amalekites are like, we need to get that water. And Moses says to Joshua, so this is the first time Joshua is introduced, choose us out men and go fight with Amalek tomorrow, and we'll stand on top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So Joshua would be about, I think he's about 50 right now, because he's 90 when they go in the promised land, okay? So Joshua is a grown-ass man, and he is in charge of the armies already, okay? Now, more than likely, if you read the extra biblical stuff, okay, Moses was actually commanding armies while he was a prince in Egypt. And he would have been doing that in his 40s before he fled Egypt. He actually conquers Ethiopia. That's how he gets a Cushite wife, okay? Joshua would have been a little kid. But you would have had probably Jews serving in the army like all the other posts, okay? They might have been lower class, and they wouldn't have been like big commanders and stuff, but you might have had them serving in the ranks of the Egyptian army. Joshua seems to be somebody who's trained in war, okay? Moses probably had connections, and he knew this Joshua was getting trained in war. He probably comes from families that are trained in war. That's just my guess. Choose us out men to go fight with Amalek tomorrow, and I will stand on top of the hill with the rod of God in mine hand. Now remember, they've just had the manna, that's the bread from heaven. There's Jesus feeding the 5,000, okay, and the 4,000. Now they've had the waters, Jesus being smitten in the face. Remember, Meribah means face, okay? Now they're going to have a type of the crucifixion. Watch this. So it says, if you get the whole typology from Joel 2, how there's this great army coming towards them, remember, the judgment of the Lord is due on the world before Christ comes, okay? Based on their prophecies, based on Daniel's 70 weeks, okay? The Amalekites are coming against them, and he says, choose these men and go out and fight. And Joshua did as had said to him, as Moses had said to him, and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill, okay? Moses, Aaron, and Hur. Now remember, Jesus was crucified with two guys on either side of him. One guy on each side of him, okay? So you have Moses, Aaron, and Hur. You're going to have Moses in the center, Aaron and Hur on the sides. They go up to the top of the hill. And it happens to pass that Moses held up his hand and Israel prevailed, okay? He's holding up his rod up in the air. Two hands up in the air, okay? He's holding up his rod like Jesus Christ crucified on the tree. Barnabas is going to point this out. He gets this type, okay? And he says, when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. Why? The Amalekites are called the firstborn of the nations. They're going to call them that later on. Balaam is going to call them that. The Amalekites represent the B'nai Elohim, the fallen angels. Okay, and so they're going to come after the stragglers. They're going to come after the isolated. They're going to attack and kill. They're going to come after the weak. They're going to basically try to destroy God's people. And as long as Jesus stays on that cross, we have victory over them. But if Jesus gets down off that cross, we don't. And this is going to be forecasted in Moses keeping his arms up with that staff between them. It's Christ staying on that cross. It's Christ dealing with his last temptation to stay on that cross, because he says he could have been taken down anytime he wanted to. He has to apply his free will to say, no, I'm going to die. Okay? And he says, when Moses' hands were heavy, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon, which is ironic because when they're on the cross, their legs are constantly giving out, and then they need to breathe, and it's really hard, and it's really painful to breathe, okay? So it says, Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands on one side. So Moses is now sitting on the rock, and they're holding his hands up, okay? But they're types of the two thieves on either side of Jesus on the cross, okay? And it says, he stayed up his hands, one on the one side and the other on the other side, and the hands were steady going down to the sun, and Joshua discomfited Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. In other words, he beat them back, okay? And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. I'm going to kill all these people. Why? Because they represent the fallen angels, okay? They are the sons of Esau's firstborn. So Eliphaz the Temanite, Job's friends, they're his son. Okay, they're his bastard son with the sister of Lotan, of the forefather of the Horites. Okay, so whatever happens with them, they start out being one of the chieftains of Edom. And then later on, they're not part of the Edomites anymore. They leave and they form their own nation. And this seems to occur before the dispersion of nations, which is why God seems to call them the firstborn of the nations. Okay? Now, these Amalekites, they're going to represent the B'nai Elohim, who were here before us, but they're always trying to hit us when we're down. Okay? And that's why he's like, I'm going to blot out the remembrance of them under heaven. In eternity, there's not going to be any Satan and his fallen angels. There's no forgiveness for them. They're going to hell. Okay? Moses built an altar there and called it Jehovah Nissi. Jehovah Nissi means what? The Jehovah is my banner. A symbolic name for the altar in the desert. So Jehovah is my banner. He is our flag. Okay? Not a snake that says, don't tread on me, nor the 13 stripes of rebellion, but Jesus is our flag. He's our banner. Okay? For he said, behold, the Lord has sworn that the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. In other words, Lord, we're never going to stop fighting these Amalekites until they're gone, until they're all gone. Okay? When Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard that all that God had done for Moses and his people, and that Jethro had brought out of the hand of Egypt, then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back. So apparently when Moses was going to have his showdown with Pharaoh, he sends his wife back home to make sure she's safe. Okay? And he says, and her two sons, which the name of one was Gershom, for he said, I have been an alien in a strange land, and the other's name was Eleazar, For the God of my father said he was my help, and he delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife unto Moses in the wilderness, where he encamped in the mount of God. And he said to Moses, I, thy father-in-law Jethro, am come to thee, and thy wife and thy 2 sons with her. And Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, did obeisance, and kissed him. And they asked each other their welfare, and they came into the tent. So remember, his father is a sheik. He's kind of an aristocrat among the Bedouin. Okay, the Midianites are going to be a Bedouin or an Arab tribe. Okay, and he's got rank among them, and so he's treating with his father-in-law. His father-in-law's son is one of his sons is going to actually go up into the promised land with Moses. They're going to settle among them. And Jael, who kills Sisera with a tent peg through his head, is descended from them. Okay? So he says, Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done from Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and all the travail that has come upon them by the way, and how the Lord delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel, whom he delivered out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Jethro said, Blessed be the Lord, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who has delivered his people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. See, now he says, now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, because probably these people had other gods by this time. For in the thing wherein they have dealt proudly, he was above them. So notice there are not no other gods. He is above all other gods. Okay, remember, the fallen angels who are worshipped among the nations are those other gods, those little g gods. Okay, but the Lord is greater than them all. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God, and Aaron came and all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before the Lord. So you're going to have Moses, Aaron, and the 70 elders. Okay, they're going to all eat dinner with him. And it came to pass in the morrow that Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses from morning unto evening. Now remember, they've only been out here a month, but they've got squabbles nonstop. He ate the last of my manna. He hit on my daughter. Whatever, just stuff going on. And Moses is like, I got to deal with this crap. And his father-in-law saw that all the people that and when Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said, What is this thing that thou doest by the people? Why sitteth by thyself alone, and all the people stand by thee from morning to evening? Okay, Moses apparently he's a prince of Egypt, but he doesn't know how to establish a government. And Jethro's going to give him some ideas, because he's a man of rank. And Moses says to his father-in-law, Because the people come unto me to inquire of God. Okay, he gets the answer from the Lord, and it's fair. When they have a matter, they come to me, and I judge between one another, and I do make them know the statutes of God and his laws. Okay, so notice there is pre-existing laws of God. He says he makes them known. Now he hasn't given them the 10 Commandments yet, but he is already establishing laws among them. Remember how I told you how where Sinai is named after, was apparently the lawmaker, probably of the Hammurabi kingdom. So God could have been behind the laws in the Code of Hammurabi. He could have inspired them. Okay. Remember, these are civil laws. These are not religious laws. These are laws about fairness between one man and another. So it shouldn't seem strange that these laws might be similar. Okay, because they're not prophetic. They're not typology. They're literally just telling you what's fair between people. And Moses' father-in-law said unto him, The thing that thou dost is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away both you and these people that are with thee, for this thing is too heavy for thee. They are not able to perform it by themselves alone. In other words, all day long they're coming to you for, what does God say to do in this situation? What does God say to do in this situation? Judge between us. And he says, Hearken now unto my voice, and I will give thee counsel, and God will be with thee. For be thou for the people to Godward, that thou mayest bring causes to God. In other words, the big stuff that needs to go to God for decision, let that happen. And thou shalt teach them ordinance and laws, and shalt show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, thou shalt provide out of all the people able men, such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, place such over them to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of tens. So what he's saying is you need to establish tiers of government: local government, regional government, tribal government, and then the big stuff, you should be the Supreme Court. The big stuff that needs to go to God, this is a big question, then you deal with that. But you get honorable men and you set them up to do this. And let them judge the people at all seasons, and it shall be that every great matter they shall bring unto thee, but every small matter they shall judge, and it will be easier for thyself, and they shall bear the burden with thee. In other words, establish a government, Moses. If thou shalt do this thing, and God command thee so, then thou shalt be able to endure, and all this people shall also go to their place in peace. So notice he's saying check with God to make sure this is okay? He is giving him wise counsel, but he's saying if God commands you so. In other words, if God says that's a good idea, then go ahead and do this. And Moses hearkened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he said. Okay, so God must have said, yeah, that's a good idea. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers over thousands, hundreds, fifties, rulers of tens. And they judged the people at all seasons. The hard causes they brought unto Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. And Moses let his father-in-law depart, and he went away into his own land. So Moses, this is the government of Israel. Okay, remember, this is not the priesthood. The priesthood has not been established yet. But this is the government dealing with civil matters, okay? And so those civil laws are the laws about how people need to treat people, okay, are going to be established. But then there are going to be laws that have to do with prophetic things and have to do with religious ordinances and stuff like that. So when you have your, Calvinists and your covenant theologians make these distinctions between the moral law and the civil law, there is some rationale for that, but there is no rationale to say, and therefore we're still under the moral law, okay? We're not under the moral law in terms of the Ten Commandments. We're under the law of the Spirit, which transcends and exceeds the moral law and everything. So we don't need to worry about the moral law, okay? This is something your Reformed people don't get. They don't understand being Spirit-filled, which is why you're going to have a lot of cessationists among them, and you're going to have a lot of legalists among them. They don't understand being Spirit-filled because they're infant baptizing their kids still. And they don't understand what it's like to be born again. It's that simple. They think believing is being born again, and they conjure up reasons why that's the case, and it's not the case. When you're Spirit-filled, when you're born again, you have the Holy Spirit in you, you have a single witness to what to do, always with you. A second witness in the New Testament. There's two witnesses. What those witnesses aren't is the Old Testament. Okay? So we're just not under the law of Moses. It's just that simple. We're not under any part of it. Okay? Now when Jethro the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard all that God had done for Moses and Israel and his people, that the Lord had brought them out of the land of Egypt. Wait a minute, I already did this one. Okay, so now it says in the third month. Okay, when the children of Israel are gone forth out of the land of Egypt, the same day they came unto the wilderness of Sinai. So remember, it's like halfway through Abib or Nisan when they leave. Okay, so now you're 6 weeks in, and now you're into the third month. Okay, so you're really it's a month and a half. So now you're going into that second full month afterwards. Okay, for they departed from Rephidim and they came to the desert of Sinai and pitched in the wilderness, and there Israel camped before the mount. Okay, so now God has brought them there. Remember, Jethro's come and visit them, and then he's left. Okay. And so we are looking at 6 weeks out, and in the 7th week, we're going to hit day 50. Okay, it's after the 7th week. And Moses went up unto God, and the Lord called him out of the mountain and said, Thus shalt thou say to the house of Jacob and tell the children of Israel, You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, so this is important. Notice how he's calling, I bear you on eagle's wings, because he's going to do this again later on when the woman flees into the wilderness, okay? How he calls it bearing you on eagle's wings, but what does he do? He leads them through the Red Sea. He has trials go on around them, but they don't get touched. He supernaturally provides food and water for them, okay? Expect something similar when the Jews flee from Jerusalem in the last days, because this is what he calls bearing them on eagle's wings, okay? And I brought you unto myself, and therefore, if you will obey my voice indeed and keep my covenant, then you shall be a peculiar treasure to me above all the people, for the earth is mine. So the whole earth is his, but he's going to make them a special people. Okay? They're going to be a royal priesthood. You shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which thou shalt speak unto the children of Israel. Okay? So notice he's saying, if you keep my covenant, you will be this. This is not an unconditional, because you're Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's children, you're going to be a kingdom of priests. He's saying, If you obey my voice and keep my covenant, you'll be this nation of kings and priests. They don't do it. And so God makes a new kingdom of priests and kings, which is through Jesus. Okay? Replacement theology is a true story. Okay? They have an if attached to be the nation of priests. They are no longer the nation of priests. Okay? The nation of priests is now Christ, in Christ. He is the greater Israel. He is the greater firstborn. Remember? They were a foretype of the firstborn, but they fail. Just like every prophet and every king fails to live up to what Christ ultimately is, they're not that. And so the new nation of kings and priests are those who are born again in Christ. The Jews are not part of it unless they're born again in Christ. Okay? Replacement theology is a problem when you have Gentile Christians saying now we're the kingdom on earth, like Israel was a kingdom on earth, and they go around trying to have dominion theology. That's the problem with the replacement theology. It's not the idea that the new kingdom is the church and not Israel. Not to say that God doesn't have prophetic intent for the ethnic children of Israel and the Israel that's in the land right now. Okay, He is, but ultimately at the end of the day, those who don't get joined to the body of Christ among them are going to go to hell. They're not the kingdom of priests anymore, okay? And when they reestablish the Aaronic priesthood in the temple worship, which they're going to do, that is going to be an abomination, okay? So don't go Reformed and Dominionist, and don't go Mosaic Law and all that either, okay? Those are the two bad ideas. Don't fight over which one's better. They're both stupid. We follow Jesus alone and his apostles, okay? So he says, and Moses came and called for the elders of the people and laid before their faces all these words that the Lord commanded them. Okay? So notice he's saying, if you keep my covenant. And the people answered together and said, all that the Lord has spoken we will do. And Moses returned the words of the people to the Lord. So he's going to give them the covenant. Okay? He's going to go on to say what the covenant is, but he's going to give them the covenant. If you keep all this, you'll be a nation of priests. And they say, we will. Okay? But they won't. Okay? So then it says, and the Lord said to Moses, now remember, he's already given them the covenant verbally. I would assume, I've talked through this before, and I would assume he's given them more details of the covenant, but he's basically saying he went to the elders of the people and asked them if they'd agree to keep his covenant to be his special people. And they said yes, okay? So I would assume he's given them ordinances of the covenant already. But it says, the Lord said unto Moses, lo, I come to thee in a thick cloud, that the people may hear when I speak to thee and believe thee forever. And Moses told the words to the people of God. And the Lord said, go unto the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow, and let them wash their clothes, and be ready against the third day. For the third day the Lord will come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai. And thou shalt set bounds unto the people round about, saying, take heed to yourselves, that ye not go up to the mount, or touch the border of it. Whosoever touches the mount shall surely be put to death. So God is basically establishing his holiness, as he's establishing that he is to be feared. And this covenant is going to go from Moses sharing it to the elders to God sharing it with all the people out loud, okay? So everybody is going to hear the covenant that they sign on to, okay? And there shall not be a hand to touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot. And there shall not a hand touch it, but he shall surely be stoned or shot through, whether it be a beast or a man, he shall not live. When the trumpet soundeth long, they shall come up to the mount. And Moses went down from the mountain to the people and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes, and said to the people, be ready against the third day, come not unto your wives. In other words, withhold from having sex for 3 days. Okay? And it came to pass on the third day in the morning that there were thunders and lightnings, and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood in the nether part of the mount. Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. So it would have looked from a distance like a volcano, but the difference is it's not erupting. It's the Lord coming down on it, and there is fire clothed in smoke. Remember, the Lord is a consuming fire clothed in thick darkness. So you want to think of this as like an angelic manifestation of what God looks like in eternity, but he's bigger than in the universe, okay? This is the Lord coming down. And he says, When the voice of the trumpet sounded long and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by the voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount, and the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. And the Lord said to Moses, Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. In other words, don't run up on the mountain to try to get a better look at God within the cloud, or you'll die. Okay? And let the priests also which come near to the Lord sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break forth upon them. So there's no priests yet, but he's saying also that the priests that are going to come to the Lord to minister to him in the tabernacle, they need to sanctify themselves unless the Lord kill them. Okay? And Moses said unto the Lord, The people cannot come out to Mount Sinai, for thou chargest us, saying, Set bounds about the mount and sanctify it. And the Lord said to them, Away, get thee down, and thou shalt come up, and Aaron with thee, but let not the priests and the people that break through to come up to the Lord, lest he break forth upon them. So he is talking like they already have priests. So this is curious to me, because he hasn't really, unless Moses has already told them that the Levites are going to be the priests and stuff like that, and so they've already established that, but they haven't, built the tabernacle and all that stuff yet. It looks like the reason that they're saying let the priests not come up is because when Moses gave the covenant to the elders, it was understood that the Levites were going to be the priests of this whole thing. So what we're going to get, remember, the Bible is not in the habit of being redundant and telling you the same thing again and again. Sometimes it is when it's communicating a testimony of a story that happened. Sometimes it is. But again, it's not going to give you everything that Moses told to the elders by God and then give it again as it's told to them in the mountain. It's going to take the things that were actually part of that covenant and put it a little later. So God is going to show up, and he's going to give them the 10 Commandments. So apparently he's already established the priesthood. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which I brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on earth below, or that is in the water under the earth. Okay? Now notice he says that this law the Catholics are going to change because of their icon worship. It's just idol worship. Okay? They want to make graven images and worship them. They want to make images of doves and images of old bearded men and images of Christ on the cross and images of Mary that look awful lot like Diana. And they want to bow down and pray to them. And so they're going to change these, and they're going to say, essentially, make this like, don't have any other gods before me, making a graven image to worship. And they're going to say, we don't worship idols, we adore icons. It's different, and we're not calling them God. They're saints and stuff. So then it says, thou shalt not bow unto them, nor serve them, for I am the Lord your God. They definitely have it. The Catholics definitely bow down to them and serve them. Okay? For I, the Lord your God, am the jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me. Okay? So the first rule is, remember, it's the 10 Commandments. First rule is no other gods. Second, no graven images, and you shall not bow down to them. Okay? And so showing mercy to 1,000 that love me and keep my commandments. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. For the Lord will not hold him guiltless that takes his name in vain. That is going to be the fourth commandment. So what taking his name in vain does not simply mean using God's, I know Ray Comfort's going to say this, using God's name as a cuss word. That can be included in it. But what it really means is to be claiming to come in the name of the Lord when you're not serving him. So televangelists take the Lord's name in vain all the time. They don't need to say "Gee, damn it," or Jesus Christo as an exclamation, or "Oh my God" or whatever. It's about taking the name, the Lord's name. In other words, I'm a Christian, but living like the world. That's taking his name in vain. It's empty. Okay, it means you're not filled with the Holy Spirit, but yet you're claiming the name of Christ. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Now, he just gave them the Sabbath. This wouldn't make sense if he didn't already explain what the Sabbath was. 6 days shall thou labor and do no work. But on the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord. You shall not do any work, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your cattle, nor the stranger that it was within your gates. Okay? So he doesn't just give them the ordinance to not do any work. He has already given them the ordinance of the Sabbath to stay in their houses on the Sabbath. You're to stay at home. For the Sabbath, a Sabbath day is about you spending time with your family and resting. Okay? That's what it's about. So it's about spending quality time with your wife and your kids. And it's not about going to synagogue and being separate and all this other stuff. It's not about all getting your chores done and running your errands. It's about spending that quality time with your wife and kids. Now, it just so happens that in modern society, we take 2 days off in the weekend. So you have time to go to church and you have time to rest with your family, but we're not under a Sabbath ordinance, okay? Nor does everybody have a Saturday to, a Monday through Friday schedule. So there's room to do more than this. But these people would have worked, agrarian society is everybody's doing basically the same work. Everyone got cattle and herds and farming, okay? And the business week was the business week. And the business week stayed the business week really until modern times. Now we have all kinds of jobs that work on the weekends and not on the week, and there's no Sabbath law, so we're okay. So it says, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth and the sea and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Okay, remember, they don't have the book of Genesis. Moses hasn't written it yet, okay? And so the Lord is explaining to them that when he's giving them the seventh day, he's giving them the reason for the Lord made heaven and earth and all that is in them and rest on the Sabbath day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So this is so their culture will always remember that God made the earth in 6 days, and on the seventh day he hallowed it, okay? So it just so happens by the time God abolishes the Sabbath requirement, well, we have the scriptures now. We have Genesis that teaches the Sabbath. It's in Hebrew, it's in Greek, and it's being spread throughout the world, okay? So we don't need the Sabbath ordinance to remember that God made the heavens and the earth, okay? But this society of Bedouins, where not everybody's got paper and books, probably hardly anybody has paper and books, they're going to need that, okay? To remember that God made the earth in 6 days, okay? Then Moses is going to write down the book. That a book is eventually going to become commonly held all over the place, and they have the memorial. Okay, doesn't mean you can't keep a Sabbath. Doesn't mean you shouldn't take rest. We definitely should be resting, but Christ is the greater Sabbath, and the testimony of the Old Covenant is going to make that clear throughout. And then when we get to Christ, Paul is going to make that very clear in his writings that Christ is the greater Sabbath. Okay, especially in Hebrews. So then he's going to say, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth to me. So Paul is actually going to take this one and say, honor thy mother and father, obviously living long in the land. He's going to say that was the only commandment giving with a promise for long life. And so he is going to say, honor your mother and your father that you may live long. Okay, so what does he mean? It means take care of your mother and your father in your old age. That's what honor your mother and your father means. It also means respect them, but it specifically means taking care of them in your old age. Why? Because you reap what you sow. And if you are unwilling to take care of your parents in their old age, don't expect your kids to be willing to take care of you in your old age. Okay? Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his ox, nor his ass, nor anything that is thy neighbor's. And all these people saw the thunderings and the lightnings and the noise of the trumpets and the mountains smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood far off. So they hear the Lord say all this, and then with all the lightnings and the thunders. Now, this is not the elders of the people. This is everybody. Moses has already explained the covenant to the elders of the people, and they agreed to this, okay? So this 10 Commandments is the general governing standard of all the people of Israel, okay? And then he is going to break down further priestly, religious laws, religious feasts, and then civil laws for dealing with certain situations. But this is basically, it all hinges on this. It's applications of this, okay? And so basically he gives them, essentially, if you can imagine, this would be like the Constitution, okay? And here's our amendments that we start out with, right? Like this is the rules. And then everything else is going to be an application of those rules. It said, and all the people saw the thunderings and the lightnings, the noise of the trumpet, and the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they removed and stood far off. And then they said to Moses, speak thou with us, and we will hear you, but let not God speak to us, lest we die. Okay? Now remember, God has spoken this stuff to him, and his voice is thundering and trumpets and stuff like that. And so they're scared of his voice. And so they say, let not God speak with us, lest we die. Okay? So they don't want to hear directly from God. This is really important. They don't want to hear directly from God. They want an intermediary between them and God through Moses. Okay? They're going to touch on that in Hebrews. And they're going to say, they're going to make the point in Hebrews. I think it's like chapter 11 or 12, where he's going to talk about how the people didn't want to hear the Lord because they were too terrified of him. And he's like, don't you refrain from hearing the Lord speak. Okay? So this is going to be a foretype of them rejecting God. They don't want to have a direct relationship with God. They want to be able to complain to Moses about God, then have Moses go get them deliverance from God. Okay? Then Moses said to the people, he said, fear not, for God has come to prove you or to test you, that you may fear before his faces, that you sin not. In other words, he's intentionally being scary so that you don't sin. Okay? And the people stood afar off, and Moses drew near into the thick cloud where God was. And the Lord says to Moses, thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, you have seen that I talked with you from heaven. You shall not make with me of silver gods of silver, neither shall you make of me gods of gold. An altar of earth shall you make unto me, and shall sacrifice thereon thy burnt offerings and thy peace offerings, thy sheep and thine oxen, in all the places where I record my name, and I will come to thee and bless thee. In other words, he's going to establish places where they can worship him and offer sacrifices to him. Okay, remember, there are places that he showed up to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay? And those are going to be the places where they're allowed to sacrifice. And he's going to establish future places, and especially it's going to be Jerusalem. But the point is you just don't go sacrifice to the Lord wherever you feel like. You sacrifice where he's established his name, okay? And if you will make of me an altar of stone, thou shalt not build it of hewn stone. Thou shalt lift up if thou lift up thine tool upon it, thou hast polluted it. In other words, I don't want your works involved in setting up your altars, okay? I don't want you to worship the altar itself. I want this to be just a plain old altar of stones. Thou shalt not go up by steps to mine altar, that thy nakedness not be discovered thereon, okay? Remember, God is present when you're going up to worship him and offering sacrifices, and he sees all. So he is literally saying, I'm right here when you offer a sacrifice to me, okay? And I do not want you to walk up on the stairs so I can see your bare butt, okay? He's saying he sees everything. That glory cloud is there. He's there, okay? Now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before him. If thou buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years shall he serve, and in the 7th he shall go free for nothing, okay? Now this is now once Moses is intermediating for them. They've all heard the 10 Commandments. But that's when they get scared, and now Moses is intermediating for them, okay? So don't think the 10 Commandments. This is why your covenant theologians, your Reformed people, are going to say, oh, we follow the Decalogue. The law is the Decalogue. And people are going to say, we're still under the 10 Commandments. No. The 10 Commandments is just when the people got scared and said, stop. We don't want to hear the Lord speak anymore, okay? So don't think that's a separate part of the law, okay? It is the love the Lord with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself is what the law hinges on, okay? And he gives you 5 major statutes for loving the Lord with all your heart and 5 major statutes for loving your neighbor as yourself. But he wasn't done. The people stopped Moses and said, tell him to stop speaking to us. We're scared to death of him. Okay? He wasn't done. So this is why you can't just isolate out the Ten Commandments and say it's just this. Okay? He said, and if he came by himself, he shall go out by himself. So in other words, he authorizes buying a servant. Okay? This would be debt servitude. Okay? It wouldn't necessarily be like kidnapping someone and making him a slave. If he came in by himself, he shall go out by himself. If he were married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master has given him a wife, and she has borne him sons and daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out by himself. And if that servant shall plainly say, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free. In other words, I choose to remain in bondage to my master because I love my wife and my kids. Then his master shall bring him to the judges, and he shall bring him to the door and unto the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall serve him forever. In other words, he pierces his ear. He actually puts his ear on the doorpost of his house, and he pierces his ear with an awl, and then that earring is going to signify you belong to this guy's house forever. Okay? Now this is going to be really important, this symbol here, because this symbol is going to be in Ezekiel 43 when they talk about you setting up a post next to my post, because this is a foretype of us being sealed with the Holy Spirit. Okay? In other words, I got myself into debt. I couldn't get out of debt. And so I had to become this guy's slave. But becoming this guy's slave, he was good to me, gave me a wife. Now I have a family. I would lose that if I stopped being a slave. And I realize I'm better off as his slave than I am as my own free man. Can you see the gospel in that? We are better off as Christ's slave than we are as our own free man in sin. Okay? And so he seals him by bringing him to the post. Now remember the last time you had a doorpost involved, that was where you put the blood on it, right? And that's a foretype of the cross, okay? And so this is like you being bonded to what happened at the cross, okay? And it's a foretype of us being sealed with the Holy Spirit. Well, in Ezekiel 43, the Levites are going to have, say, you set up another post next to my post. In other words, you've made a counterfeit of this, and that's going to be the mark of the beast, okay? And it says, and if a man sell his daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the men servants do. If she please not her master who has betrothed her to herself, if a man sell his daughter to be a maidservant, she shall not go out as the men servants do. If she please not her master who has betrothed her to himself, then let her be redeemed. To sell her unto a strange nation he shall not have power, seeing he has dealt deceitfully with her. It seems to authorize selling your daughters as sex slaves. I'm just going to be real with you here. Because he's saying if he doesn't like her after that. In other words, it's not saying giving her as a wife. He's saying selling her. Okay? So like a concubine. Okay? And he's saying if he doesn't like her, he's not allowed to sell her to foreign cultures. Okay? Selling your daughters into sexual servitude happens all over the world, especially in really old indigenous cultures. So it seems like that was happening here, and this boils down to in really poor cultures. I mean, I know cultures where it's just like you have to work every day to afford your food. That's it. Okay? When you see people that are doing stuff like this, it's literally like, I have no means of taking care of this daughter. And this man's got a lot of money. And so he can afford to have an extra woman around. And she's like a concubine, okay? She's essentially a sex slave. But what it's saying is that he does not have authority to sell her to a foreign people because of his unfairness to her. Because, in other words, he bought her as a sex slave, and now he's saying, I don't want her anymore, so I'm going to sell her. So I bought her, used her for the sex, and then sold her away. It's like, no. She's your concubine. You're responsible to take care of her well-being for the rest of her life. She's yours, okay? So I know this stuff is going to seem really cold and ruthless and stuff like this, but you need to understand that this was about what it took to feed somebody. Okay, you're talking about people living in the wilderness. There's not just like potatoes lying around on the ground. Okay, like You need money. You need means. Okay, and basically, servitude was a lot of times about getting your daily bread. Okay. Then he says, and if he betrothed her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. In other words, he could be buying your daughter to be his son's future wife. Okay? So he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. If he take himself another wife, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage, he shall not diminish. So what does that mean? It means she is owed due sex, she is owed food, and she's owed clothing. Okay? That bodily comfort is part of the deal. And if you have 5 wives, you have to sleep with all of them. You can't just be like, yeah, she's just a decoration. Okay? And if you do not do these for her, then she shall go free without money. In other words, he shall be able to set her free. She doesn't have to buy her freedom, nothing. Okay? He that smites a man so that he die will surely be put to death. And if a man lie not in wait, but God deliver him into his hand, then I will point up a place where he shall flee. So in other words, if you kill somebody accidentally, like I didn't intend to kill this guy, maybe I got mad and hit him, maybe it was an accident, whatever it was, remember, the law of avenging your brother's death is still around from Moses, okay? Everybody in the world follows this. So he's saying, I'm going to give you places where you can flee, and they're going to be protected. They're going to be like sanctuary cities where you cannot kill these people, even though under the law of Noah, they should be killed, okay? But if that man come presumptuously unto his neighbor and slay him by guile, thou shalt take him from my altar that he may die. In other words, even if that man clings to the altar, you're going to pull him away and kill him, okay? And this stuff is going to happen later, okay? He that smites his father or mother shall surely be put to death. So if you hit your mom or dad one time, you shall surely be put to death. He that steals a man and sells him, or if he shall be found in his hand, shall be surely put to death. He that steals a man and sells him. Okay, so I want you to understand this. When your Calvinists started their Dutch slavers and your English slavers started your overseas slave trade, while claiming that the Mosaic covenant is still there for the judgment of the wicked, I want you to understand these people had a Bible that says if you steal a man and sell him, or if he shall be found in his hand, he shall surely be put to death. Okay? It's not just that you're doing the stealing and selling. It's all the slave traders in America, plus everybody who owns the slave that is stolen. Not bought, not sold into slavery, kidnapped people. Death penalty. Now, think about that when you have these Calvinists in the founders who started off with an African racist slave system. And basically, they know these slaves were kidnapped from Africa. And they all have them. And they're also saying we're still under the law of Moses. According to the law of Moses, they should be put to death. Every last one of them should be put to death if a slave is found in his hand. Okay? You don't buy somebody who's kidnapped. If somebody goes into debt slavery and then they sell them to somebody else because of their debt slavery, that's one thing. If somebody goes and kidnaps them, it's different than taking captives in war, okay? We're talking about man stealing. We're talking about you kidnapped a guy. We're talking about we went to these African tribes and they just kidnapped a bunch of people, men, women, and children, and they weren't at war with them. And when you caught people in a war, and you made slaves out of them, it was typically, you're not taking them from their homes, you're making them pay tribute after that. Okay? In some cases that you take them from their homes, it's so that they can't form an army and rebel against you again. Okay? It's more of a defensive measure. So it's always because the person who becomes a slave screwed up. You shouldn't have anybody who's a slave who didn't do anything wrong. Okay? And so you want to make sure that you understand this, that anybody who says the law is still binding, the Mosaic law, the moral law is still binding, the civil law, well, then Jonathan Edwards needs to be put to death. It's that simple. George Whitefield needs to be put to death. It's that simple. I want you guys to understand what a deep hypocrisy we were in when we founded America. Because these guys believed we were under this law, and they looked at that and they said, well, reasons. He that curses his mother and father shall surely be put to death. If men strive together, that one smite another with a stone or with his fist, and he dies not, but he keeps his bed. In other words, he's knocked out, and he's hurt. And if you rise again and walk abroad in his death, then he that smote him shall be quit. He shouldn't be put to death. Only he shall pay for his loss of time, and shall cause him to be thoroughly healed. What does that mean? It means you got your tort. You're paying for lost wages, and you're paying for him to get his medical bills. Okay? If a man smite his servant or maid with a rod, and he die under his hand, he shall surely be punished. Notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, he shall not be punished, for he is his money. That's his property. Okay? In other words, if he continue a day or two, what does that mean? It means if he doesn't die like immediately, in other words, he continues a day or two before he dies, well, then he obviously didn't kill them. But they're his property. It sucks. Again, you shouldn't be a slave if you didn't do anything wrong in the first place, okay? But if you have a slave that didn't do anything wrong in the first place, well, he's put to death, okay? So then he says, if men strive and hurt a woman with child so that her fruit depart from her, and yet no mischief follow, he shall surely be punished according to the woman's husband will lay upon him. He shall pay as the judge determines. So, circumstances, okay? Do you want this guy put him to death? And if any mischief follow, then he shall give life for life. I don't know what he means by mischief follow. If there's any further injury, you shall appoint as a penalty life for life. Okay, so in other words, the punishment has to fit the crime. Okay? But basically, you can make a demand on this guy. You caused us to lose a baby. What's the cost? Whatever the judge says. How about you just never strike a woman with a child and you'd be scared of the penalty? How about that? Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot. Now, this is how you know we're not under the Mosaic law anymore. Because Jesus is going to say, you have heard it said, eye for an eye. He is quoting the law. And then he's going to say, but I say, do not resist a man that strikes you. If he strikes you on one cheek, give him the other. Jesus is not going to uphold this in the new covenant. That's how you know. You need to understand that Jesus is not just coming against the rabbinical interpretation of the law. He is coming against the law itself. And he's telling you the law of the kingdom is different than the law of Moses, okay? In the law of Moses, it's eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. In the kingdom, it's don't resist evil being done to you. We don't live by that, most of us. This whole country is like about getting our just due. Okay? When you've been into a situation, when you've been wronged, and you can't do anything about it, and you have no power, and your only appeal is to God, you're getting closer to walking like Jesus. Okay? Because that's what he had. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burning for burning, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. If a man smite the eye of his servant or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. In other words, if you hit your servant and their eye comes out, they lose an eye because of it, they're free. That's it. You've done enough. If he smite his manservant's tooth and the manservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake. If you knock a tooth out of him, you let him go free. If an ox gore a man or a woman that they die, then the ox shall be surely stoned, and his flesh shall not be eaten, but the owner of the ox shall be quit. Okay? In other words, you kill the ox, you don't get to benefit anything from the ox is dead, but you're not going to kill the man for it. But if the ox were wont to push in the horn in time past, in other words, if the ox has attacked people previously, and the owner and it has been testified to his owner, and he kept him not in, and then he killed a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and the owner shall also be put to death. If you knew this animal was prone to attacking people, and you didn't keep him penned in so he couldn't do that, it's your life. Okay? These laws are not meant to bring perfect justice. They're meant to scare people into doing the right thing. Okay? They're meant to scare people into you don't want to be a slave. Remember, you have to let people go free after 7 years, one way or the other, okay? You don't want to be a slave. You don't want to be stupid with your money. You don't want to be foolish with your belongings. You don't want to be violent and lose your temper, okay? You want to be careful, where did that slave come from? how is he justly a slave? Okay? We are not here to create the perfect society with these laws. We're here to put a society together where people are scared of being put to death and they have a limited control on how wicked they get. Okay? That's all the law does. The law is for the wicked. Okay? So then he says, let's see. And if there be laid on him a sum of money, then he shall give it for the ransom for his life, whatever is paid on him. In other words, your ox killed our kid. You give us all of your wealth, or be put to death. Take your pick. Okay? Whether he have gored a son or gored a daughter, according to the judgment, it shall be done to him. Same thing with a miscarriage. You killed our kid. That's our future livelihood who's going to take care of us. You give us everything you own and become our slave, or be put to death. Those are your choices. If the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, he shall give unto his master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. If the ox shall push a manservant or maidservant, he shall give their master, okay, so this is not a kid, this is just pushing them, 30 pieces of silver. In other words, get your animals under control. Your animals do not attack people, okay? If a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or ass fall therein, the owner of the pit shall make it good, and give money to the owner of them, and the dead beast shall be his. And if one man's ox hurt another that he died, then he shall sell the ox, sell the live ox, divide the money of it, and the dead ox also, and they shall divide it. Now we both lost an ox, okay? If it shall be known that the ox had used to push him in the past, and his owner had not kept him in, he shall surely pay ox for ox, the dead shall be his own. If a man shall steal an ox or a sheep and kill it or sell it, he shall restore 5 oxen for an ox and 4 sheep for a sheep. That's the cost of stealing. If a thief be found breaking up and be smitten that he shall die, there shall be no blood shed for him. Oh, he caught you breaking into my house and you're dead? No penalty. 0. I'll allow it. Okay? If the son, see, people want to say, oh, we like those laws. We like to be able to shoot people for coming into our domain and have no penalty. Okay. Did you kill all the slave owners? You can't pick and choose which parts of these that you think are just for our society today. You're either under all of it because you're part of Israel, or you're not under it. Okay? You don't get to separate the Decalogue because that's when the Jews said, stop talking to us. Okay? You don't get to do that. This is the law, the whole thing. And if you break one tittle of it, you've broken the whole thing. So this is the sun be risen upon them, and there shall be blood shed for him. He shall make a full restitution. If he has nothing, then he shall be sold for his theft. In other words, if he gets caught, there shall be blood shed for him. In other words, if he's found breaking in, that's one thing. But if it's obvious what he's doing, like it's obvious, he's to make restitution. Okay, this is the restitution. If he has nothing, then he's going to be sold into slavery for it. Okay, so if you catch him breaking in and kill him, that's one thing. You don't know if this is an Amalekite or what have you. Okay, if you see who you catch him and you know he's doing, then you make him make restitution. In other words, you catch him, you don't just get revenge on him. Okay, he either gets sold or he pays the money. 4 sheep for a sheep. And if the theft be certainly found in his hand alive, whether it be an ox or ass or sheep, he shall restore double. If a man shall cause a field or vineyard to be eaten, and shall put in his beast, he shall feed in another man's field. Of the best of his own field and the best of his own vineyard shall he make restitution. If a fire break out and catch in thorns, so that the stacks of corn and the standing corn of the field be consumed wherewith, he that kindled the fire shall make restitution. If a man shall deliver unto his neighbor money or stuff to keep, it shall be stolen out of the man's house. If the thief be found, let him pay double, okay? When you form the laws in the common laws in England and stuff like this is going to be, 12th, 13th century, this stuff starts. They're going to go back to stuff like this because a lot of these are just common sense, good laws. They're just fair, okay? You're going to have stuff like this, and the Code of Hammurabi used all over the world to form the basis for their laws, and they're going to get more technical and complicated over time. But this stuff is pretty good, okay? Pay him double or pay him fourfold kind of keeps most people from stealing, okay? It's meant to scare you into doing the right thing. It's not meant to make a perfect society. If a thief not be found, then a master of the house shall be brought up to the judges to see whether he have put his hand unto his neighbor's goods. For all manner of trespass, whether it be for an ox or a sheep or raiment or any other manner of lost things, which another challenges this to be, the cause of both parties shall come before the judges, and whom the judges shall condemn, he shall pay double for his neighbor. If a man deliver unto his neighbor an ass or an ox or sheep or beast, let it die, and it die, or be hurt or driven away, no man seeing it, then shall the oath of the Lord be between them both, and he shall not put his hands to his neighbor's goods, and the owner of it shall not accept thereof, and he shall not make it good. And if it be stolen from him, he shall make restitution on the owner thereof. If it be torn to pieces, then let him bring a witness, and he shall not make good that which was torn. In other words, a wild animal kills it. And if a man borrow aught from his neighbor, and it be hurt and die, the owner thereof being not with it, he shall surely make it good. But if the owner thereof is with it, he shall not make it good. If he hired the thing, it came for its hire. In other words, if I hired you and your ox to plow my field, and you're driving the ox and then it dies, I don't owe you for the ox. Okay, he died on your watch. Okay, and if a man entice a maid that is not betrothed and lie with her, he shall surely endow her to be his wife. Okay, this is if he seduces somebody. And if her father utterly refused to give her to him, he shall pay money according to the dowry of his virgins. Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live. Whosoever lieth with any... See, this was what's ironic. Your Puritans were taking this law, thou shalt not suffer the witch to live, but they had slaves. They had kidnapped slaves. So did you see what hypocrites these people were? Whoever lies with the beast shall surely be put to death. He that sacrifice unto any god, save unto the Lord only, shall be utterly destroyed. There shall neither vex a stranger nor oppress him, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. In other words, we're not going to be like Sodom and Gomorrah and rape the strangers that pass through. You shall not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If thou afflict them in any wise, and they cry out unto me, I will surely hear their cry, and my wrath will wax hot, and I will kill you with a sword, and your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. God cares about the widows and the orphans. They don't have anybody to take care of them. Okay? It's bad enough already. If thou lend money to any of my people that is poor by thee, thou shalt not be to him as a usurer, neither shalt thou lay upon him usury. You cannot lend money to your own people with interest. Oh, when the Dutch were imposing law and the Puritans were imposing law, they didn't have a problem with this one. We don't have a problem with doing usury. Okay? And again, this was Jews to Jews. But if Christians think any of this applies, then they have to say, well, then Christians are banned from banking. And they should be totally happy with the Jewish bankers. But they weren't, were they? Okay? If thou at all take thy neighbor's raiment to pledge, thou shalt deliver him unto thee when the sun goes down. For that is his covering only, it is his raiment for his skin, wherein shall he sleep. And it shall come to pass, when he cries unto me, that I will hear, for I am gracious. In other words, don't take what he needs to stay warm at night. Okay? Thou shalt not revile the gods, nor curse a ruler of thy people. Thou shalt not revile the gods, okay? Now, this is where people are going to say, oh, this is a Hindiatus, and he's saying the rulers of this people are symbolically gods. No, it's not. No, it's not. Remember, the context of this is Jude saying how Michael, even, the archangel, didn't bring a railing accusation against Satan, okay? Now pay attention to this, because Jesus didn't even bring a railing accusation against Satan. Jesus used the word of God to rebuke him. Okay? He said, no, it is written this, get behind me. In other words, quit trying to tempt me. Okay? He didn't go tell him, these charismatics were like, Satan, you're going to go to hell and you're going to burn forever, blah, 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 blah. Let's tell him about his future, right? Like, no, Jesus didn't rail against Satan. Michael the archangel didn't rail against Satan. You have authority to resist Satan and he'll flee from you. Never do you see the disciples going around chasing the devil out of geographical regions. It doesn't happen. Okay? They're casting the demons out of people who God is setting free, but then they go into the pigs. They're still in the region. Okay? You don't have authority to chase the devils out. Remember, the 70 still rule over the nations. Okay? Those 70 Elohim, those fallen Elohim still rule over the nations. Michael still rules over Israel. Okay? You don't. These NAR prophets are saying they're taking back the world from Jesus, from the demons. They're lying. They're under the demons. They're doing their bidding. Okay? Thou shalt not revile the gods. They're talking about Elohim. Okay? Thou shalt not revile the Elohim, nor curse a ruler of thy people. Why? Because the ruler of your people are in authority over you, and these gods are in authority over nations. Okay? God placed them over the nations. When he divided the nations, he put them under these 70 angels. When he divided the original 70 languages. That's why you have the Prince of Greece and the Prince of Persia. That's why you have them withstanding Gabriel. Okay? They have authority. They're given dominion by God, so we don't have the right to cast them out. Okay? It's just not true. God will cast them out in the last days, but we have the right to exist under the dominion, doing the Lord's will as ambassadors of his kingdom. And that's why they don't have power over us either. We're ambassadors. We're under the law of heaven. And they're over their dominion on earth, so we don't get to go around Iran and break all of Iran's laws. Okay? Well, what about their Muslim laws that you have to bow and pray and all this stuff? Okay? Well, we could suffer and die for not doing it, but we're ambassadors. We don't follow their customs, but we also don't break their laws. Okay? So you need to balance that equation, and you need to realize you're an ambassador from another nation here. Okay? So then he says, thou shalt not delay to offer the first of thy ripe fruits or your liquors, the firstborn of your sons thou shalt give to me. Likewise thou shalt do with the ox and the sheep 7 days. It will be with its dam, and on the 8th day thou shalt give it to me. What is its dam? So liquors could be any kind of fruit juice, just so you know. It doesn't have to be alcohol, okay? They would call that strong drink, okay? He says 7 days it shall be with its mother, okay? So he's telling him that the firstborn of the sheep and the firstborns of the sons are his. Again, that's talking about redeeming them. And you shall be holy men unto me, neither shall you eat any flesh that is torn of beast. You shall cast it to the dogs. Okay? So all of this these are all extensions of the Ten Commandments. Okay? If you think we're still under the Ten Commandments, then we're still under all of this. And unless you're murdering everybody who's ever had a kidnapped slave because they're due death, unless you're forcing everybody who's ever fornicated to marry the person they fornicated with, okay, then you can't say we're under this law. You shall not raise a false report, and put thine hand with a wicked to be an unrighteous witness. You shalt not follow a multitude to do evil, neither shalt you speak in a cause to decline after many to wrest judgment. Neither shalt thou countenance the poor man in his cause. Okay? Now notice this is like thou shalt not bear false witness. See how these are all extensions of thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not covet, right? He says, if thou meet thine enemy's ox or ass going astray, thou shalt surely bring it back to him again. If this is, not coveting. It's not just not wanting to take his stuff, it's not wanting to see him lose his stuff. Okay? If thou see that the ass of him that hateth thee lying under his burden, and thou wouldest forbear to help him, thou shalt surely help him. In other words, what are you saying? He's saying, if I see some guy's donkey can't hold its weight and it's collapsed underneath it and it can't get back up, just because that guy hates me doesn't mean I'm not going to help his donkey. I'm going to help his donkey. Why? Because that man is like those 70 angels who are enemies and they hate us. And all those people that are suffering underneath them are like that donkey. Okay? We don't mistreat what's under a person's authority just because that person's a jerk to us. Okay? I don't hate a man's kids because that man's a jerk. Okay? Thou shalt not wrest judgment from the poor in his cause. Keep thee far from a false manner, and the innocent and righteous slay thou not. For I will not justify the wicked. And thou shalt take no gift or bribe, for the bribe blinds the wise and perverts the words of the righteous. So if you're a judge, you do not take charitable gifts from people. Why? Because they're trying to sway your judgment their way. Okay? I'm not just talking about here's some money so that you make the judgment my way. I'm saying, hey, judge, we just wanted to honor you with some Christmas gifts. Here's some money. Here's part of our harvest. Nope, won't take it. Why? Because I'm a judge. My job is to judge people. And when I stand in court, I don't want the people who've been giving me extra Christmas gifts and love offerings and stuff like that to be contorting my justice. Okay. Thou shalt not oppress a stranger, for you are a stranger, seeing you are strangers in the lands of Egypt. For you know the heart of a stranger. You know what it feels like to be a stranger, for you are strangers in the land of Egypt. In 6 years you shall sow the land and gather the fruits thereof, but in the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie still, that the poor of thy people may eat, and what they leave the beasts of the field you shall eat. In like manner thou shalt deal with thy vineyard and with thy olive yard. 6 days thou shalt do thy work, and on the 7th day thou shalt rest, that thine ox and thine ass may rest, and that thy son of thine handmaid and thy stranger may be refreshed. And in all things that I have said unto you be circumspect, and make no mention of the name of other gods, neither let it be heard out of your mouth. Okay, so we don't use the other gods' names, nor do we rail at them. Okay? I don't go to an Islamic country and say, Allah is a piece of crap, Allah is a piece of crap. Okay? I don't do that. They worship that God. I don't worship that God. I don't mention his name. I worship Jesus. I honor him. I don't go out of my way to dishonor their gods. Okay? I honor my God. And because I honor my God, I cannot submit to their God, but I don't go out of my way to rail against their God. Okay? 3 times thou shalt keep a fast to me in the year, and thou shalt keep a fast of unleavened bread, and thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days, as I commanded thee, in thy time appointed in the month of Abib, for in it thou camest out of Egypt, and none shall appear before me empty. And the feast of harvest, the first fruits of thy labors, which thou hast sown in the field, and the feast of ingathering, which is in the end of the year, when thou hast gathered thy labors out of the field, 3 times in the year, all thy males shall appear before the Lord God. Thou shalt not offer the blood of my sacrifice with leavened bread, neither shall the fat of my sacrifice remain until morning. The first of the firstfruits of thy land thou shalt bring into the house of the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not seethe a kid in his mother's milk. So you have all these things, and you have this seething a kid in his mother's milk. And this is what I think this means. The milk, the pure milk of the word, is God's word. And what I think it's meant is, this seems cruel, okay? Just on its face. Seething a kid, in other words, you're boiling a calf to eat in its own mother's milk, okay? There's something cruel about that on its face. Its mother's milk was meant to nourish it, and you're using it to boil it, to kill it, okay? It's already dead, but I mean, it's symbolically, it's wrong. I think this means that the word is meant to help you, not meant to kill you. And I think that what this is meant to mean is that you don't use the word as a weapon. Your goal with the word is not to hurt people. Okay? That would be my guess. But anyways, he's going to talk about the first fruits offering, unleavened bread, and then he says, Behold, I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way and to bring thee into the place which I have prepared. I send an angel before thee. Beware of him and obey his voice. Provoke him not, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. So listen to what he's saying. This is really where the angel of the Lord is introduced, okay? I send an angel before thee to keep thee in the way, okay? This angel of the Lord is Jesus. My name is in him, okay? It's a foretype of Jesus, and it's an angel of the Lord. Now, we're going to go on and learn from the other people that that's who met Moses in the bush. The Lord is saying that basically that one in the cloud. Remember, the cloud's always been in front of them. But then the Lord descends on Mount Sinai, okay? So this is where some of your Messianic Jews are going to say, well, that's God the Father, and this angel is Jesus, okay? No, because no one's seen God. No one's seen God or heard his voice. That's what Jesus is going to say, okay? So what's going on? I don't know. Is this angel Michael, and he's symbolically representing the Lord? I don't know. But I know that it's not the Father down in the mountain. It's an representation of the Father, but it's the Lord. It's the I Am. It's Jesus. Okay? So he said, if thou shalt indeed obey his voice and do all that I speak, then I will be an enemy to thine enemies and an adversary to thine adversaries. For mine angel shall go before thee, and shall bring thee unto the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and the Canaanites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. I will cut off. Joshua's going to meet this angel. Are you for us or for our enemies? And he's going to say, neither. I'm on the Lord's side. Okay. I don't know if that angel is Jesus or Michael. I'm gonna look at that carefully. I'm not going to make a definitive statement here. Thou shalt not bow down to other gods, nor serve them, nor do after their works, but thou shalt utterly overthrow them and quite break down their images. Okay? Now he's talking about in the land. He's not just talking about going around the world smashing everybody else's idols. He's talking about in the land of Israel. They're not allowed here, okay? You shall serve the Lord your God, and he shall bless thy bread and thy water, and take sickness away from the midst of thee. There shall be nothing cast of their young, nor barren in thy land. The number of thy days I will fulfill. Notice this is all about the land, okay? I will send my fear before thee, and I will destroy the people whom thou shalt come, and I will make all thine enemies turn thy backs unto thee, and I will send hornets before thee, which shall drive out the Hivite and the Canaanite and the Hittite before thee. This is why the Antichrist has this swarm of locusts that sting people, okay? Because Joshua is going to have hornets that go before him that chase out these people. And I don't know if these are demons or actual hornets, but the Antichrist is mimicking that. He's mimicking the conquest of Canaan. He says, I will not drive them out from before thee in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the beasts of the field multiply against thee. Okay, in other words, you're going to slowly take over the land. By little and little I will drive them out before thee, until thou be increased and inherit the land. And I will set thy bounds from the Red Sea even unto the sea of the Philistines, and from the desert unto the river. So that's Egypt. So that's the Negev to the Euphrates River, sorry. And I will deliver the inhabitants of the land into your hand, and I will drive them out before thee. Thou shalt make no covenant with them, nor with their gods. They shall not dwell in thy land, lest they make thee sin against thee. For if thou serve thy gods, thou shalt surely be a snare unto thee. Now he's talking specifically about the Canaanites. He's very clearly, see the Hivite, the Canaanite, the Hittite. He's talking about the Canaanite tribes. And he said to Moses, come up to the Lord, thou, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel, and worship ye afar off. And Moses alone came near unto the Lord, and they shall not, and Moses alone shall come near unto the Lord. So he's going to bring Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu. Those are his sons. So he has already established the priesthood. Leviticus is going to give you all the rules for the priesthood. But my guess would be what the Lord gave him, which is in Leviticus, is what Moses shared with the elders. And that's why you have Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu and the 70 elders of Israel. Okay? So the priesthood and the elders are established through, the elders were already there, but the priesthood is established. And my guess is that Moses already has Leviticus. Okay? Let's see. And Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the judgments, and all the people answered with one voice and said, all the words which the Lord has said will we do. So notice how it's saying, it's almost like he's going back here. In 22, let's see, 20... See, because it says, and laid before their faces all these words which the Lord commanded him. Okay? So, it's almost like this is a heading, and then this is what the Lord commanded him. Okay? So in chapter 19, he's saying, this is what he laid before them, all these words which the Lord commanded him. And the people answered and then said, we'll do this stuff. Okay? And then when you get to chapter 24, he's saying, now get them to come up to the mountain. And Moses will come to the Lord. And then they said, Moses wrote all the words of the Lord and rose up. Let's see. And Moses came and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the judgments. And all the people answered with one voice and said, all the word which the Lord has said we will do. Okay, so I don't have an exact representation of how the flow of this is chronologically. But it looks like there's some back and forth, and it looks like it's not like in exact chronological order when he gives them this, and then he says this, and then they all see him on the mountain. Then it says Moses wrote all the words of the Lord, so he wrote them down, and rose up early in the morning and built an altar under the hill and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel. So notice he doesn't have the 10 commandments yet. Okay, now the 10 commandments are going to serve as like the if you will, the cornerstone for the other laws. Okay, so he's going to get those on tablets. Okay, that's the basis for this, but they're going to have another, the application set that goes with them. Moses has already written that down. Okay. And he sent young men to the children of Israel, which offered burnt offerings and sacrificed peace offerings unto the oxen of the Lord. And Moses took half the blood and put it in basins, and half the blood he sprinkled on the offer. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the audience of the people, and they said, all that the Lord has said we shall do and be obedient. So they have a book at this point. It's not the book of Exodus. They have a book of this covenant, okay, before they have the 10 commandments. And I don't know if that book is Leviticus, because Leviticus has some narrative in it that doesn't seem to have happened yet. And Nadab and Abihu are going to die in Leviticus. So I don't know if that would be Leviticus, or if it's going to include the laws of Leviticus, or if it's just everything that we just read. Like, that's the covenant that they have to keep. It seems like that's it. Okay? But anyways, it says, and Moses took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, behold, the blood of the covenant which the Lord has made with you, with all these words. So all the words that he just gave them, including the 10 commandments and all these other sub-laws, they've said, we agree to this, and he sprinkles the blood of the covenant on them. Okay? That's going to be a foretype of the blood of Christ being sprinkled on us. Then went up Moses, Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel, and they saw the Lord. They saw the God of Israel. Let's see if that's Eloah. They saw Elohim of Israel. They saw the God of Israel. There was under his feet, as it were, paved work of sapphire stone, and as it were, the body of heaven in its clearness. Okay, so it's not just Moses; it's all these people. They see the Lord. Okay, they have a vision here of God, and it seems kind of like, on the Mount of Transfiguration or something like that. But they're seeing the God of Israel, so they're seeing Jesus, and paved work under his feet were a paved work of sapphire stone, and as it were, the body of heaven in his cleanness. I want to see some other versions. The very heaven for clearness. A jeweled floor cleared as the heavens. A pavement of sapphire as clear as the sky itself. So it seems they're seeing the Lord underneath like a sea of glass. That seems what it is. And the nobles of the children of Israel and upon the nobles of the children of Israel he laid not his hand. Also they saw God, and did eat and drink. And the Lord said unto Moses, come up to me on the mount, and be there, and I will give thee tablets of stone, and the law and commandments, which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. So this is the bizarre thing. Aaron, Nadab, Abihu, and the 70 elders of Israel have all seen God. And now he's like, bring Moses up here, and we're going to give you the 10 commandments in stone. Okay? It says, I will give thee tables of stone, and a law and commandments which I have written, that thou mayest teach them. Okay? Notice it doesn't say just the 10 commandments. Maybe we'll get a clarification later. And he says, and Moses rose up, and his servant Joshua, and Moses went up into the mount of God. So Moses and Joshua go up in. These Aaron and his sons and all the 70 elders have seen the Lord. Okay? And he says to the elders, tarry here for us until we come again to you, and behold, Aaron or her are with you. If any man have matters to do, let him come unto them. So Hur is Miriam's husband, just so you know. Remember how Aaron, Moses, and Miriam represent a kind of Trinity, right? And because a woman is not to be an authority over men, and she's a prophetess, whenever you see a prophetess, you're going to see her husband named, okay? Just like Philip's daughters, you're going to see their father named. Why? Because she doesn't even though she's a prophetess, she's still under the authority of her husband, and that's why you see her representing, that's Miriam's husband, with Aaron and Moses. Okay? But the three do reflect a type of the Trinity, okay? So he says, and Moses went up to the mount, and the cloud covered the mount. And the glory of the Lord abode on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And the 7th day he called unto Moses in the midst of the cloud. So he's up there for a week. And the sight of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mount and in the eyes of the children of Israel. Remember, he's a consuming fire clothed in thick darkness. This is where they get it from, okay? Now, they're seeing a miniaturized version of God, okay? So this would be Jesus, but reflected in a glory that looks like what God is, bigger than the universe, okay? And Moses went into the midst of the cloud and gat him up on the mount, and Moses was in the mount 40 days and 40 nights. I'm going to stop there. That is going to be the giving of the covenant, okay? You have a lot of supernatural stuff going on here, way more than it has happened in previous books of the Bible. And you're basically going to have 70 men, and those men eventually are going to all prophecy too, okay? So God is heavily involved, not just with Moses, but with Aaron and the priesthood and the 70 elders. So you don't have this Moses and Aaron just showed up and convinced these people that God was talking to them. You have a lot of stuff that was done before all the people. All the people saw the Lord appear in the mountain. These guys saw him up close, okay? So when they go to start worshiping the calf 40 days later, remember, they have 70 people who have seen him. Counting Aaron and his son, 73. Okay? 73 people who have seen him up close. And they're going to go build a calf and say, this is what he is. Okay? So, I'm going to stop that there. This is going to be the Lord up on the mountain, and he is going to explain the ark and the tabernacle that they should make. They haven't made it yet. And then he's going to come down the mountain, and they're going to blow it. And then basically after they blow it, he's going to come get a second tablet, and that's going to be a type of the new covenant. And then they're going to go basically build the actual tabernacle, and that's going to be the end of Exodus, okay? So I'm going to leave that there, and I hope you guys are blessed by that. I hope you pulled out some, got some new things that you didn't see before. Go back and read those books. Read them very carefully. Look at multiple translations, because you have these guys seeing the Lord. And then the Lord is saying, I'm going to send my angel ahead of them. So there's a bit of a question here. Like, are they seeing the Father and the Son? Jesus is saying no one's seen the Father or heard his voice. Okay? So I would assume that has to be Jesus then. But who's this other angel that he's saying is going to go ahead of him? Was that the angel of the Lord? Is that a messenger of the Lord but not the Lord himself? Is that Michael? Because Michael seems to be the one who's stands watch over the children of Israel, and that seems to be the scripture of this angel, and he says, my name is in him, okay? Well, Michael's name means who is like the Lord. So is he standing as kind of a representative of the Lord? I don't know. Let's learn this as we go, okay? I tend to not believe the stuff that's handed down to me from tradition because I found so much of it to be bunk. So I learn as I go. I put my reason together, and if I learn that I was wrong, then I learned that I was wrong, okay? But we can do this. We don't need this school of theologians telling us what we must think. We just use our ration and our reason, because every other thing they say is wrong, okay? Hope you guys are blessed by this. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Batman out. Peace.
Peace, I'm out. I'm Batman.